right. Who has the mic?
I got the mic
You got
right
the
here.
mic.
Shoulder mic.
Welcome, guys. We are back again, and Nate is here for the first time in a few weeks. Welcome back. Welcome back. I have to tell you, I am really relieved that he is here because the load of doing this on a show on my own was a little too much to handle. So, welcome back, and I'm happy that you're here. Today we have a really interesting program brought to you by Nate, since I didn't do anything about the content today. But we're going to be talking about training plans. We're going to be talking about your training plan, how it should change depending on who you are, your running history, your injury history, what your goals are, and how that thing should evolve.
Yeah. Really excited. You know, choosing the training plan is it's a really fun thing to do. It can be a little scary thing to do because you're like, I'm about to commit, 8, 12, 16 weeks of my time, and I want to make sure I'm choosing the right thing. And
who are you going to trust?
Who are you going to trust?
Not people like this.
You're gonna trust these guys? I don't know. So obviously, we have our own programs out there. We're going to talk about it a little bit, but we want to expand the conversation beyond that because we've been in your shoes. Like, I have followed numerous free programs online.
Same.
I have listened to my buddies. I've had coaches where I didn't even think about it. They just told me what to do, and I did it each day. So we just want to go big picture and just like think about, okay, what are all these things about? And, how do we go into it?
If you happen to be using a training program that is not ours, we'd love to hear which one you're using. And then also, there are a lot of solutions for depending who you are, where you might want to take little elements that you find from somewhere else and combine them with elements that you find in another place. And that is totally a good solution. We always are trying to encourage people that, you're not just following blindly. You're listening to your body and you're learning to train yourself. That is the whole skill of being an athlete, to adapt and change as necessary.
Skill in being an athlete.
Yeah, I would know because I just do whatever he says.
How is skill of being an athlete with skill of baking bread?
Oh, guys, I baked my first loaf of bread.
He did.
Should we show a picture of that?
I think we should show a photo because it is really beautiful.
I wish there was an easy way to show photos from my phone. I'm just going to hold it up because otherwise I got to transfer my phone. It's kind of a pain. But I should just show them the actual loaf, but part of it's in the freezer.
It's really something good looking. Let's see if this works.
Yeah, can you see this? Oh.
There we go. Look at that. It looks like something from a magazine. It's totally crazy.
There we go. It's out of focus. Anyhow, I took a bread making class, and Nate has actually been making bread for how long?
We've been messing around with it for it's crazy. It might be almost 2 years now.
Is it really?
Yeah, a year and a half.
Or
did we start last September?
It's probably a year.
Maybe it's been a year. Feels like 2.
It's been a
two bread years.
Right. And they bring me bread all the time, and now I'm hoping to repay the favor.
I know.
Took my first bread making class, baked my first loaf. The starter is in my kitchen. I just fed it this morning. So
this may seem like a random aside, but for those of you guys who are in the middle, well, I'm gonna bring it. I'm gonna fold it in for something delicious. When all we have is our running, and running is taken away from us, and we're just focusing on that race program and all the days we're not doing, it's a not fun and stressful thing.
That is true.
But if you're not feeling like running that day, but you have activities like bread making instead, you're like, oh, well, I didn't run today, but I made something delicious and tasty and satisfying.
It is very satisfying.
I'm still rounded out as a human being.
I was shocked at how satisfying it was to pull the loaf out.
Aaron says 2 years. Aaron does confirm almost
Aaron says 2 years. All right. Well,
my wife says 2 years.
I'm 2 years behind the curve, but I'm coming up quick.
Well, guys, it is so good to be back. The last 2 weeks in Italy was just absolutely fantastic. We rode our bikes through Tuscany, and we basically ate our weight in gelato on a daily basis.
When he says we, he's talking about him and Aaron.
Yes.
Not us. I was here staring at the computer.
He was here doing like fun things with spreadsheets and the internet website.
We're gonna make it all okay. I
definitely appreciate. I had moments where I wasn't thinking about sending emails or running programs. I was just riding my bike in beautiful Tuscany. It was like, this is a lovely thing. But I was able to do that because we have such an awesome team.
Yeah, totally.
So good.
We actually ran pretty smooth last week.
Yeah.
Without you, we don't even really need you here, to be honest.
Hey. That is
all right. Today, welcome back from Hampton, Virginia, Madam Traffic Jam.
Oh, hey.
Madam Traffic Jam, that's your YouTube name. From Sweden. How's it going? Renee, I don't know where you're from. Kosti from Romania. Wow, we got
What's
people
up?
from all over the globe today. What time is it in Romania?
I know, right? Zoom asks any tip for a tibia stress fracture.
Can we have a rollout video? It's a bread joke. Yeah, it's funny enough.
Heyo.
There's no kneading.
There is no need to knead.
There's no need to knead in this formula that we're...
You need your muscles way more than you need the bread.
So there is this thing, if you've ever visited San Francisco, there's this kind of lure of like San Francisco sourdough bread.
Yeah.
And like the real like sourdough that you think of when you think of sourdough bread is actually not what a lot of us eat over here. There is like a really kind of bread renaissance, if you want. There's like really great bakers.
Bread-essence?
A bread-essence. But it's been really awesome to like learn like what makes bread sour, like the lactic acid in it versus acetic acid, and it's kind of a whole thing. I'm not gonna go too deep on it because I could talk for about an hour about bread. I'm reading.
It's
a bread
so
book.
cool, guys. It's actually running. It is like running and coaching in a weird way.
Would you like to see my bread book?
Sure,
hang on.
Because you're gonna show it to me regardless of what I say, so we might as well. But like these types of things, guys, as we get into our coaching program, where with training we're laying out a certain schedule that we want to follow, but there's this essence of following something that has been, you know, scientifically laid out and proven.
This is my tartine bread book.
This beautiful book of tartine.
We're a little hot on the. We might be a little hot on the.
Do we need to bring this down?
On the ISO. Yeah. Oh, that's gonna.
Oh, that's gonna make it a little more hot.
Go this way. Yeah.
There we go. You go. This. A little bit better.
Tartine bread book. You know.
Very cool.
Really great. All right.
And anyway, enough about.
You guys are like gluten free or like carb free.
I know.
Or
you're
keto
like,
or whatever.
what is this? Anyway, well, you guys
I do have my
totally
green
lost
smoothie.
me.
It's on the last end of it, but
other fun little updates before we get into our main topic today, which if you're just tuning in is how to choose a perfect training plan for you. We're going to really break it down and of course answer your questions.
Gleam link
is our giveaway,
yep.
which is in the Gleam link down below. We are giving away 2 winners. Really, some of just my favorite
these
tools, like the yoga tune-up balls. You get a pair of them, and you get a free month of the training club. So you can actually try some of the training that we just talked about today.
I like it.
Speaking of, we are doing a live 30-day challenge coming up in July.
Oh, that's right.
Ahead of our next virtual 5K.
Yep.
Our summer virtual 5K 2018 is going to be in conjunction with the San Francisco Marathon.
When are we officially? I mean, you can't sign up for that yet. We're officially launching it, what, Monday?
Hopefully next week. We're just getting the videos done. But if you guys get in and win a free month, you can do the free training with us.
Totally.
Not a bad deal.
Absolutely. So hit that link below.
Get in there.
Sign up.
I know. I'm a little rusty. I was going to forget that part.
Man, he's been eating too much gelato and biking
too much
through
everything,
Tuscany.
But other little things, our Healthy Habits program, our live nutrition challenges, guys, we got challenges on challenges on challenges this year.
I really like these. I like how it sections things off where you kind of like concentrate on your...
It does, and it really brings our like Facebook community together and all of you guys kind of doing one thing live. So Elizabeth and Pine, our lovely nutritionist, is leading the way and we just started this week, and it's going to be 30-day habit-based challenge where you're just doing small adjustments kind of on a daily basis. And it could be, you know what, you are going to go to the grocery store and you are going to try to cook with a new ingredient, vegetable or fruit. You're going to think about packing lunch tomorrow, and then it gets more advanced, so like you're going to try to meal prep for the week. But what we really like about this is that these are habits that really, once you do them, like they can stick around for a long time.
Yep.
Like my wife and I pack our lunch every single day, you know, and it saves money, saves that TRE dollar for those occasional, fancy meals.
And when he's a little light on the lunch, packing, he just
I go into $15 jars of fancy peanut butter.
About 20 minutes ago, we're in the kitchen, and I saw Nate going for peanut butter, which is totally fine. Except for I had bought this very fancy peanut butter. It's like $15 for like 8 ounces, which is absolutely ridiculous. I bought it because it was so ridiculous I had to try what does $15 peanut butter taste like. It turns out it tastes a lot like peanut butter, good peanut butter. But there's no way for him to know, so he's just like going to town. I was like, that's a $3 bite right there.
I really feel like peanut butter is a blue collar food, right?
It is. I mean, the whole term, it's cheap as peanuts. Like
I know.
I don't know what happened.
So you're like, hey, like eating some peanut butter. I'm not like killing them. I'm eating like
make anything
I'm putting this like
Francisco.
super fancy stuff on like
a tortilla chip.
A tortilla or a tortilla chip. It's not like caviar. It's not like I went into like Craig's caviar and like, ooh, I'm just gonna like eat all this stuff.
No, he's just going for the peanut butter. You know what?
Yeah.
It's but all good. It's all good. It is good peanut butter.
I've got a nose for the expensive.
All right, let's redirect back onto topic.
Redirect back into things. I always love that. Yes, training plans.
Erin says she's debating getting my bread book. Erin, I will trade you temporarily. We can swap for Josie Baker and the tartine bread books, and then.
I know we got a bunch of people actually talking about bread, though. I feel like we might need a second subject here. Rissa says, "I was just in San Francisco. I tried the sourdough, which was good." Tone says, "I love sourdough bread. Overall, toast with some tomato oil and oregano. That's awesome."
Yeah. So
now I'm very into walnut bread. Very interesting.
You know, interestingly enough, sourdough bread, like the term, you know, people think of it as being the sourish, like kind of like soury taste. But actually, the bread, if it's like leavened bread with like a natural yeast, then it is sourdough bread. But depending on how long you have it sitting in proofing and how long you keep it fermenting and the ratios and the timing, whatever, you can have bread that doesn't taste sour at all.
Yep.
And it is still sourdough bread, and that is actually the majority of bread that you find here in San Francisco.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of bread, let's actually get into.
Oh, we have a super user, Guy Greater X, would like us to answer his question.
I'm training for my first half in July. I also love to do CrossFit a couple times a week. Will this hamper my run training?
Okay. Do you want to start there? I mean, Guy, we're definitely going to answer your question. But
yeah.
You want to start there? You want to kick it off?
Why don't we start with a little bit more of a general thing, right? When we think about training, I kind of wrote out some notes for this.
Yeah.
So
we'll get into it in a second, Guy.
When we're talking about like the perfect training plan, really what we're talking about is the perfect training plan for you. Mm-hmm. And really what that means is we have to figure out your current fitness levels, your running goals, your time and availability to run, and really what you're trying to do.
Right.
And just to give you an example, you're going to see programs out there that might vary in terms of the number of runs per week and the mileage, right? Yep. Like if you're someone who's more advanced, doing a 6 run day a week program where you're seeing, you know, mileage north of 50 miles might seem appropriate, and that's probably something you did when you were in college.
Totally. And even more nuanced than that, how many like hard workouts are you putting in a week?
Yep.
For some of us, 2 hard workouts is totally great. Like that gives you enough time to recover. You can run 6 days a week, but only 2 of them are really hard runs. You have a long run, you have a tempo run, whatever it is. And then sometimes, you know, if you are able to handle it and you're getting enough sleep and rest, you can do 3, usually not 4 workouts, hard workouts. And then how do you integrate your strength sessions and other things that might tax your body? So, you know, the kind of adaptation and response.
Totally. On the other side of things, if you're that brand new runner, finding a program that is lower on the mileage, maybe in the 15 mile a week to 25 to 30 miles, where you're only maybe running 3 days a week, maybe 4 tops.
Yep.
But then you're also doing other stuff in the program.
Yep.
You know, so like you can start to evaluate programs based on that, and then you're going to look at like the coaches that put stuff out there. Like there's certain coaches and methods that are usually a little bit higher mileage.
You're like thinking of the brothers. What are they called?
The Hanson brothers.
Hanson brothers. Yeah.
Now the Hanson brothers have an incredible reputation.
Yep.
One of their athletes just won Boston this year, Desi. So they're doing okay, and they have a philosophy. I remember reading their book where they're a little bit higher mileage. The intensity is generally a little lower.
Yep.
Because they feel like when people run high mileage and high intensity is where they get in trouble, which is true. Mm-hmm. You got to probably choose. And they also de-emphasize the long run, which is really interesting. They really try to distribute the mileage throughout the week versus I'd say a lot of newer runners, when they get into that half and the full marathon, they might see 50% of their weekly mileage on one day.
Agreed.
You know?
Yeah.
So balancing those things is interesting, and if you were to do something like Hanson, like it's good to know that you're going after that philosophy, and you also want to know like, hey, is my body going to respond to that? Like certain people respond better to greater miles, less intensity. Some people vice versa. Like they could do a lot more intense workouts and they feel good, you know, maybe more from say like a CrossFit standpoint, because you're asking about, you know, shorter, high intensity stuff, but it's the volume they're not ready for yet. So figuring out like the approach.
Yeah, and then there are all the elements that we focus on, which are usually actually the non-running elements. You know, in our programs, would you say that, you know, we don't take, you know, our programs from a running perspective don't take a lot of risks? You know, like you know, the Hanson brothers, like I would say that their mileage, and like actually Kyle was telling me about, he has a 10-day training cycle now instead of a 7-day training cycle.
Interesting.
And like you can change things like that, and in some cases it's kind of alleviating you, giving you more rest time, depending on your schedule. For a 10-day,
you know,
you're doing
it's funny you say this, because I was talking to Mario Frioli, you know, our good friend, really like respected, you know, like elite running coach.
Yeah.
You know, we kind of asked the questions like, who says you need to do a long run every weekend?
Right.
You know, and he purposely takes a lot of his elite guys and sometimes mixes it up depending on what they're trying to do. Like sometimes there's a long weekend, like a long run that weekend, or sometimes it might be something shorter but has some tempo in it. So it is really interesting, and it's a nice reminder like where that 7-day cycle came from. It really came from just our work schedules, in all honesty. Like we kind of always put the long run on the weekend because that's when we had time to do it.
Yep. And it does not necessarily say that is the way your body adapts.
No.
And so, you know, Kyle Bowling, who's, you know, coached with us before, he likes a 10-day schedule, but it requires him to get up super early in the morning and do a long run on a Tuesday sometimes. And, you know, one of the things that, you know, when we don't take a lot of risk with the mileage on our programs, because running is one of the, like, you know, how far you run is the easiest thing to change about a program. So if you wanted to, you know, change the mileage, it's very easy to swap that in and change your mileage up. Whereas the elements where we try to focus on are usually the things around running, which is your strength, your mobility, and injury prevention, and then your form technique.
Yeah, I think that these are things that we would argue that everyone needs, but, you know, is it something that's actually in the program or not? And for certain of you guys out there, like if you have good resources and you kind of know what you're doing in those other areas, then you might not need it in the run program, you know, but for a lot, it's like, it's beneficial if you are. And I'd say that if you're someone who's coming, who's building up running for the first time, it's an incredible opportunity to learn those good habits in the beginning. I'd say our more experienced runners, in certain ways, they're more difficult to work with just because you're contending against 10 to 20 years of bad habits and the consequences that have accrued from that, versus someone's brain who's like, oh, okay, we'll just do this this way.
Mobility is just part of my schedule. That being said, you know, if you're following another program and you feel like you need to inject, you know, with a deeper strength program, of course we have it offered, but we also have lots of resources online where you can kind of start to make up your own if you are that level of like ability and learning how to train yourself. So
now cross training is another big piece in the plan, and I was when we were doing all our filming with Dathan Ritzenheim, I kind of asking him if he separates strength from cross training, and he absolutely does.
Oh, interesting.
And I think that's really helpful. You know, sometimes we use cross training as just this general bucket for anything that's not running. But what he's, you know, talks about, which I like, is that, you know, cross training are alternative aerobic activities. Right? Where it's like I am swimming, water running, cycling, something that is going to help kind of build my aerobic base, et cetera, but just get me in a slightly different movement pattern. And I can cross training to help supplement, maybe increase my volume for the week if I want to. As a triathlete, we cross-trained, right? That's what we did. But that doesn't mean that the strength training piece should be removed, right? It's like cycling on your bike is not going to substitute for your single leg deadlifts, for example.
You know, when I was running like with a kind of more intense schedule in terms of mileage and doing 70, 80 miles, I always thought of cross training as like a weak form of a workout. Like I'm like, like go like for a walk or a hike. It just feels like meh. And what I've realized as I've gotten older, and as we get older in our lifestyles, we tend to have slimmer and slimmer, you know, what I call the vocabulary of movement. Like how many movements do you do during the day? How differentiated are there? And what I've realized is that when I was a kid, I used to do so many things that I was naturally just very resilient to injury because my body was moving in all these ways and there's a lot of balance. But as you get to the point where like, hey, I'm doing my workout for the day, my one exercise for the day is running 8 miles at a pretty good clip, and I come back and then I'm at the computer all day, there's not that much variance in my movement. And I think even outside of strength training, which can be functional, the nice thing about having variance, whether it's a yoga class or whether it's just going and playing with your kids or throwing a frisbee around, whatever it is it gets you moving in different ways, and I have come to appreciate how healthy that is. You know, you can be a healthy person by running all the time, but to be a healthy human, you kind of need a little bit more variance in movement.
I like that. That's good. You know, what do we should, I feel like we should talk a little bit about the differences between, you know, beginner programs and how pace specific they are versus maybe more advanced programs where you're getting a little bit more race pace specific stuff. I feel like with beginner programs, if you guys are going after that half marathon or marathon for the first time, or 10K or 5K, you don't really have to worry about the pace part at all. You know, like focusing on the effort levels, you know, that doesn't mean that you don't want to do hard stuff. Like even your beginner 5K program should have some hard stuff. I think that's important and valuable and healthy. But the goal is just to get to the finish line, and that's great, you know. As we get more advanced, though, we want to start to think about what our race pace is.
Right.
Now, have you ever followed the programs? Have you followed any programs that have like a time-specific aspect to them?
Yeah,
like a 3:30?
Back in the day, for sure, when I was like, you know...
I never have. What was it like? Have you guys followed the race-specific plans? Do you like them?
Yeah, like you know, like, hey, you want to run a sub-3 marathon.
This is a 3-hour marathon program.
I have never found that it correlated with... you know, oh, I followed this program and then I got this time.
Yeah.
Granted, you know, anecdotal evidence and like not a whole lot of test samples there. What I would say is that, you know, there are sometimes like mistakes because like, your aspirations and your ability level and where you are physically are not always in the same place.
No.
And so I find that like not doing that means that every day I have to kind of question, okay, where am I today?
Yeah.
Like what am I like trying to accomplish today? What like type of workout is it? And then how intense can I go?
Yeah.
How much have I rested? And that continual process has always been healthier for me than saying 3-hour marathon, that's where I'm going.
I need to run these
and therefore
paces.
These are the paces, these are the workouts, and I decided you know, in March and the race is at the end of June.
I'm really glad you brought that up because, you know, I've worked with athletes individually for a long time. And, you know, what's interesting is that this coach-athlete relationship that this training program is supposed to represent, guys, is really important to recognize is that there is a back and forth. Like when, like the coach is not the dictator.
Right.
They're not standing up, telling what the athlete to do, and they just kind of nod their heads and do it. It's based on how the athlete's responding, how they're feeling, and sometimes like bodies respond differently to different workouts.
Yep.
Like it might take someone an extra day to recover from a certain type of workout than another person. Like let's say someone takes an extra day to recover from a speed workout, but then their long run, they actually recover faster.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like just these little nuances, or like your kid came home and gave you the flu, you know, or you had to like take that last minute flight to Chicago and you got stuck overnight and you slept 2 hours and then your program says you have this crazy hill climbing workout the next day. Like, how do you deal with those things? So when we get into the program and we think this is like the perfect thing, you know, being successful as an athlete is not necessarily being an A+ student in terms of following the program. You know,
I think it is being an A+ student in terms of like listen to your body.
Yes.
Yeah.
Following and when not to follow it. So having that freedom to not follow the program and whip up a good loaf of sourdough instead.
Back at the bread. We can't escape it.
Full circle. Back at the bread.
We don't have a piece of bread here to eat.
I know.
Okay, I want to. So, Guy.
We got a lot of great questions and comments in here too.
So, if you guys have not done this before, there's a feature called Super Chat, which is enabled, and if you throw a few bucks in there, your question gets highlighted, and of course, if you do that, we will make sure to answer your question thoroughly. So, Guy had asked, I'm training for a first half in July. I also love and do CrossFit a couple times a week. Will this hamper my run training? I have some thoughts on it, but why don't you go ahead? Yours is a much more informed specifically on this question than I think mine is, but.
Well, why don't we start with the less informed and move to the.
So as a runner, oh, you know, okay, I can go. As a runner, like I moved into CrossFit pretty heavily about 5 years ago and started doing it. You know, when I was hurt, I was doing it 4 or 5, sometimes even 6 times a week, and I got a lot stronger. I got a lot more just able in a lot of different movements that I had never tried before. So overall, I would say I was actually more fit on a general level, and I could handle just a lot of load, whether a lot of strength training, these kind of like high intensity workouts like Murph and stuff, and I was doing pretty well. Now, as a runner, I would say my ability as a runner was good, but I also started putting on like CrossFit weight. Yeah. And I mean that meaning like strong bulk up top. And I think that when you're doing, when you are working out in one modality, it depends on what you want to do with your running. So if your
priority at the time was you weren't really trying to push your running. You were exploring something new.
And actually now I'm trying to explore more of my mobility, and running is still secondary to like kind of my increasing my movement, but it is more of a focus than it has been in the past. So I've kind of reduced my CrossFit. And because of that, like I'm gonna, I anticipate slimming down a little bit more and seeing how that impacts. For me, I'm just playing around. But if I was serious about like, hey, I really want to like reduce my halftime, I would probably still do CrossFit as a strength training, but also like, the workouts that we prescribe in our strength training are not just some of the movements are from CrossFit, but they are meant to be run specific. Like they are meant to, single leg stuff. So you can get into a CrossFit workout and they're so highly variant. Yeah. Over the course of 8 weeks, you might do a hell of a lot of like, overhead press, right? Which has some good movements in it, but it's not necessarily directing you towards running. So that would be my thought.
Yeah, and I like that, like just your experience coming in as a runner to going into it to see how this feels. Guy, to really answer your question, for all of you guys who are just interested in either exploring something like CrossFit or any type of group exercise or boot camp or training,
or even yoga.
Like the group exercise, and I coach this, guys, so I'm not knocking it in any way. It is blind to your individual running ambitions and your training plan. Right. And I like to call it, city bus style programming, which really means that people are hopping on and off all the time, getting to their destination. The run programs that most of you guys start, you pick your race date and you work backwards. And you're like, okay, just for example, like because we are the official coaches for the San Francisco Marathon, we are going to be running different portions of the race. I think Craig and I are going to be running the half marathon, the second half. And we're following our 8-week program with the training club. That's right. And, we're in week 1 right now. So I counted backwards from the race, started on Monday, following our program. And that has this has progression to it, right? That most group exercise doesn't have. The benefits of the group exercise, you get coaching. You are in a social place where you are working and meeting with other people. It's kind of nice not to, swing a kettlebell by yourself in the basement. Totally. You're around people. And, you get that energy, which is a lot of fun. And for so many of us, like the running, the strength, everything, it has to be social as well as physical. And I really like the combination of the two. But as you said, there could be days where they're having you do some crazy high volume thing that might involve like 100 burpees and 100 pull-ups, and you're like, holy shit, that's gonna mess me up in a major way because I just did this crazy track workout today. The group exercise doesn't care about your track. So when you're combining those two things, and especially as you get closer to your race, talk to your coaches, let them know that you have this race you're following and you're in a program and how they would modify it. And then most coaches, in my experience, they don't want to mess you up. They want to make you better. So they'll work with you to help you modify those things.
And hopefully you're at a gym where you can kind of like modify the workouts according to what your goals are. If you're in a huge class, it's sometimes hard to do that. So just keep these things in mind. All right.
So we got a few other follow-up here. Dexter says in the bottom, I found that my CrossFit body is affecting my ability to run. Wanting to focus more on distance running, I've had to cut back on CrossFit too. I pick and choose WODs these days. I do the same, man. Like I'm building my running back up. I've cut my strength down to 2 sessions. I do a lot more, like running specific stuff. It doesn't mean I don't lift heavy, but the volume's not as high. I do more single leg stuff, and I'm just trying to get more running in. And I just to be able to like flow in and out of this is really important.
It's a personal thing too, right? Like if you and I do the same workouts, I put on a lot more bulk than you do. And maybe it's my nutrition habits, but like in terms of like pound for pound, muscle for muscle, like I tend to put on more weight up top.
Yeah.
I think because we were working out and doing the same stuff for a long time, and I definitely changed my body type through doing that. And that's just a personal thing. I mean, it just depends on how your body responds.
Yep.
And so for running, maybe I don't want that as much. But for CrossFit, it was great.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Let me see here. So X Sinclair says, should a beginner runner's 4-day run program, trying to go from run walk to run only, do speed work, easy run, tempo, and long run each week?
Man, for a beginner's running program, doing tempo and long run off the bat and speed work, it's a lot. You know, if it is truly a beginner program, that's a lot of things to throw in there.
So here's my feeling on it. I think that we can take these ideas, the principles of running, of taxing different energy systems is super important. The thing that's going to vary from one runner to the next is going to be the degree.
Yep.
So for example, your speed session could involve 3 by 20-second pickups.
Right.
You know what I mean? Where you're just getting a little exposure, but the vast majority of the run is slow.
Yep.
Like the volume isn't as high. And the same thing with your tempo. The tempo could be moderated as well. I really like that general template to go after. To your point, I think the danger is as the beginner runner, you're biting off a little bit more than you can chew. So being really patient there. I think what's great too, when you start doing speed and tempo, it breaks you out of the run walk, because we use this in the beginning and it's a survival mechanism. It helps us go further, but it can be used a little bit as a crutch after a while. Like people get stuck in certain run walk methodologies and it's like, really, you can't run further? Like you can, but you're just so used to running 3 minutes, walking for 1 or whatever. So break it up.
You know, I was just thinking, so, you know, you and I are both doing the half marathon coming up in July.
Yeah.
What if we started to check in every week on where our training was, and we'll start recording our workouts?
Yeah, I think that'd be kind of cool.
We're running the same race.
We're running the same race. We'll give a little check-ins
and
here.
I think we're actually on a fairly similar schedule. I'm doing more mobility than I am strength at this point.
Yeah. I've been doing more running.
Yeah.
Another great person, this just got brought up, QWE0610, I think is how I'm just going to say that name.
Yeah, 610. I recently came across Jeff Galloway's run and walk training. I followed Jeff Galloway's programs all through high school.
Any comments? Are they mostly geared towards beginners? They, you know,
I wouldn't say they're only
they aren't. They are and they aren't. You know, I had the pleasure of hearing Jeff speak one time, and someone asked him that question, and he countered and said he had an athlete, you know, run a 2:28 marathon using a run walk method, or went from a 2:32 to 2:28 using the run walk. Like, when you look at competitive Ironman athletes who are running 3 hours or faster in a marathon off of a 112-mile bike, off of a 2.4-mile swim, a lot of times they will like walk for a brief moment in the aid stations that happen to be every mile, so they can get enough fluids in and keep themselves cool, because just nutrition and energy management is so important. So in essence, the best triathletes in the business are run walking.
And just think about that. If you are run walking a 3-hour marathon, that means you are probably going 6:12 or 6:15 pace, and then you know, every mile you're taking another 15-20 seconds of like walking, slowing down, and then pick it up and blister. But just mentally, that helps out a lot. And I think that there's a lot to it. I you know, we have this philosophy we talked about a lot, which is when I am running in the morning, whether it's 4 miles or 8 miles, I am unapologetic about walking. I walk across streets. I walk if I just decide, no, it's nice over here. I'm just gonna like walk around, look around. It is my time. And then when I'm running, I crank. Like I don't mess around. But I never even knew what run walk as a strategy was. I've always just naturally done it.
I think there's an intuitive aspect to it. I think that it gets interesting when so first of all, for those of you guys who aren't familiar, one of the amazing things about this run walk paradigm is that people who have done it, they've added walk breaks into their longer runs, which is key part of today's conversation, because when you're choosing a training plan, figuring out one that has the right philosophy that maybe gives you room to do that, which can make all of a sudden higher volume, greater levels of intensity more accessible to you than not. when people do this, it gives their body these little reprieves so that even though they've run the same distance at the end, they don't feel quite as sore as beaten down.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to me about that is that these walk breaks are this little pattern disrupt where you are able to string together like shorter, higher quality run sessions together.
Yep.
Because what happens otherwise, like you guys are maybe sitting at your desk and we're 38 minutes into this thing. Like how did you start versus how are you now? Right. You know, like there's always this degradation. I just flew across from Italy to here. I probably started like this, you know, in the plane seat, and after a while I was, you know, here and I got off and I'm like, oh, I don't feel that good. Like think about what happens in your run. You might start here towards the end. There's going to be some degradation, right? It's just going to be, and those walk breaks is a way to reset things so that when you run again,
you're more efficient.
Yep. And we play with that in our programs about, you know, maybe instead of just taking a walk break, I do a couple air squats, I do something else in there just to cue you muscularly, get the right muscles firing, getting you back in your body in that way. So it's very cool. Running Geek Girl says, I've had a lot of success with Galway in the past. It's definitely worth checking out. Some people do have a hard time stopping and walking, like Jeff here says, not sure if it's mental, if it's just hard to get going again. I will slow down and breathe. You know, I was that runner for a long time when like walking was admitting defeat. Yeah. Like I didn't even want to stop and use the restroom. Like I just wanted to keep going. When I
run with people like that, if ever it's the only time I notice, like, oh man, we're not stopping at all. This is like really annoying. And like get to a stoplight and like pushing through, and then there's no breaks for 45 minutes an hour. And I'm like, oh, this is like more like a...
The one thing I will say though is that however you practice is how you're going to play.
Yep.
So if you are someone who is looking to, like, you're skirting the edge of that time, you know, maybe the walk break is built into the time you're doing. Yeah. But if you train with a lot of breaks and then you're trying to race without any breaks, that's a hard jump.
Yeah, and
you know, so having some exposure to removing walk breaks is helpful.
You don't have to do this throughout. Like you can have your tempo run and your long run be straight runs, right? And you start your watch and you keep going. But
so guys, we're getting some great conversation and questions here. I wanted to go a little bit further up just to address a few things. Vinny asks, how many hours of sleep do you recommend for a 6 days a week workout? It's really hard to say.
For 6 days a week, how many hours? Oh, that's a very personal thing.
It is really personal.
But here's a metric, right? If you're going into a hard workout and you're sore, you're not getting enough rest. Whether it's sleep or just like time in between those hard workouts. Like if you are sore going into workouts that are supposed to be like an adaptation response, like your tempo run, your hill run, you know, intervals, whatever it is, mile repeats, whatever it is. If you're going into it and you're sore from the last time you worked out, or now you're kind of like adding, you know, taxation on a taxation, which is
the one thing I would say is that we all have the amount that we can get by on when we're not training. But when we move into training and we're doing more stuff, like we probably need more sleep, not less. Yeah. So figuring out how to get that a little bit more. And guys, that's a huge part. Like if you are signing up for this ambitious training plan, if you are able to support yourself with the right hydration, nutrition, sleep, and recovery habits around it, that could be really successful. It could be the best plan for you on paper. You have done all the mileage, it's all lined up. But if you don't respect these other areas, like it'll chew you up and spit you out real quick.
Let me ask you a question. So you're running more now.
Yeah.
Is your weight fluctuated at all?
I don't know. I don't really weigh myself. Yeah, I just said, like, what about you?
I've gone down a little bit when I started, but I think that if I really want to run and like see what my body is capable of, I would have to lose another like 6 to 8 pounds. And I don't mean this just like I want to lose 6 to 8 pounds. It's more like it's probably going to be, a lot of it is going to be muscle. And it's just moving from being like more of a CrossFit weight training athlete, which I've done a lot more of in the last 5 years, to kind of moving back into being, you know, running and like, you know. So I'm curious. I haven't decided whether I want to do that or not, but
I've personally like weighed myself in the past. It's not a productive thing for me. It just makes me go down a weird direction. I don't personally find like some of you guys can do it and can track it, and it's not a thing for me. It was something I was like, okay, this is like
too much.
Yeah, this is like a little like black box of my mind. I just want to keep like for me, pushed in the attic.
And this is really is a personal thing. For me, measuring myself in the morning is more about hydration. So,
that's interesting.
Like when I get up in the morning and all of a sudden I'm down at 184, I'm like, I didn't lose 4 pounds yesterday. That's not a thing. And what it meant is I didn't drink enough. And so I kind of try to hop on that.
You are looking super skinny today.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It's because I'm on the wrong side here. You guys notice that we swapped sides?
We have, yeah, I know, right? Jackie chimes in. She says, TRE member here. Love your programs because it includes strength, then, when, and the how. Thank you. You know, that is one of the reasons why we wanted to start the Run Experience was because we did want to remove some of the guesswork that we both experienced. Like when we followed programs, you know, these programs would be written by really great people and they'd say, yes, we love strength training. We just don't have it for you. Or we love cross training, and it would just be like a sentence or two description. I was someone who ping-ponged through a lot of injuries and I needed a lot more specific guidance.
And we are total fans of people who take our training program and then adapt it like, hey, I want to do the mileage on the advanced program, Jeff Galloway's, but Jeff Galloway's program does not include all the stuff that we have, and so let's swap the mileage out. It's so easy to swap mileage. I mean, that's the simplest thing to change.
Yeah.
And we're super, experiment with it, see what works for your body. But the whole purpose of what we wanted to create was something that had all the parts that we thought a training program should have, which includes, being able to ask questions to a coach.
Totally. So we're getting some other good stuff. I want to address, guys, so many questions today. I really love it.
I'm going to take a pause. If you have not signed up for the Gleam link below, we have a giveaway. We're going to send out you a yoga tune-up ball, which is actually my favorite thing to travel with. It's nice and light, and it can kind of do a lot of different things. It comes with this little carrying case to put them in and do work on your spine. And of course, you get a month of our training club for free, which means you can join our Healthy Habits Challenge. You can join the virtual 5K, the 30-day challenge next month.
I know, a lot of good stuff going on. So check that out. We'll do the drawing next week. And of course, we will do last week's drawing from last week, seeing the Caterpie laces at the end of the show. Look at you guys. So this was a great one. Let me see here. It was from Sydney. Sydney Brady, what are the training recommendations for a 5K runner coming off of an injury? Injury.
Well, that's a very broad, if your leg is broken in two pieces, it's a little bit different than if you had a, tweaked Achilles or hamstring. So it's a very broad, but I guess we're assuming that you can run without pain right now.
That's a good thing. Like, maybe we'll answer it this way as opposed to saying absolute stuff. Like, what are the questions you should be asking yourself?
Right.
So one level is like, can you run without pain at all? Yes or no? And that's going to dictate what you need to do. If you're someone who is able to, it's not that bad, you can still run some, you have to then ask like, well, what type of running can I do? Is it only slow stuff? Is it painful when I run hills? Is it painful when I run faster? That's going to help you in the short term as well. Yeah. When you are someone who is running, when you're someone who's running with an injury, I would avoid out and back runs at all costs. Because the worst thing that happens with an out and back run, let's say you want to run 5 miles, you get out 2.5 miles and you're like, crap.
Take your phone and call an Uber. I've done it.
Well, now you can do that. I used to have experiences where I had to like limp home, which was the worst.
It's a sad day,
but giving yourself go run on a track or a short loop where it's not as exciting, but you give yourself little bailout points. Yeah. That's a lot more easier. Like, this is starting to go too much, because so many times when you're coming back from an injury, it is literally this like nip tuck line you're trying to ride. Of course, we want to ask the question of, why am I injured in the first place?
Yeah.
What is happening here? And if it's a knee or a calf or Achilles thing, we could start to look at, well, we don't want to blame things on the program in terms of, I ran too much, or I did too much intensity, or I just raced and then I tried to do another thing. Those are factors that will expose whatever potential weakness you have or inefficient mechanics. But normally a good way to approach this, guys, is to think about, your body mechanically.
What is the imbalance in my body right now? Whether it is tight hamstrings, or tight quads, or it's like, you know, maybe you're really flexible in one area but not flexible in another area, or your gait is, you know, clipped in some way, or you have another injury, so you're leaning on something.
Yeah.
You know, there are there's a myriad of problems, and like looking to your body as opposed to looking at the spreadsheet is probably a good idea.
And to kind of approach this from bigger, broader terms perspective, of course, we can go real deep into the weeds with any specific injury here. We can just do some like little touch tests and pinch tests. Like if I've got something around my knee, or let's say around your knee, right? What I might want to do is I want to probe my quad, my thigh, my calf, my hamstring, just above and below that knee, and just see how tight those muscles are. I should be able, like, healthy muscle, right? And this is something that, you know, a physical therapist will say, will feel pressure but no pain. Right? Happy, healthy muscle, like, oh yeah, I've got a little pressure here if I'm like pressing on the shoulder, but it's not too bad. But if you are jumping, right, that's a sign that maybe something's a little bit off. So in the short term, keep it really simple. I have a tight, painful muscle. I'm going to give that muscle some love. It's my quads, my hamstrings, my calf, for example, around the knee. And you may find that when you do that, that brings a little bit of blood flow to the knee, and that takes a little tension off, say, that joint or whatever.
This is motivating me so much right now. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to start working on my lower legs more.
Yeah, right. It's sometimes it's as simple as that, right? If you've got something going on with your foot, your calf, your Achilles, poke around the area. What's tight, what's not tight. If it's painful, double down there, right? That is a sign that is not normal. Like you are an area that's not great. Now the other thing we want to focus on then is going to be the strength and stability side and the assessment. Hey, if it's, say, my ankle, well, how much range of motion do I have in that ankle? Can I squat down all the way with my heels flat? Oh, my heels come off the ground. Maybe my ankles are stiff. Maybe this is why my calves are stiff. So I need to address my ankle range of motion mobility, and I can start to work on those things. So I've got my short-term thing I'm going to do, and then my long-term approach that's going to take, is not going to see immediate results, but I can start to like chip away. And work that way. What were you going to say before
I was just thinking, like, you know, my lower, right near my heel, all the way up to my soleus, like that area is almost never pain-free if I press into it. It's just all, like when I'm running a lot, that area is, and truth be told, like it is an area that has, you know, I've neglected for years, and that area is tight, and just needs a lot of attention. And for everybody, there is going to be a different area. You know, I've been giving my hamstrings a lot of attention because my hamstrings are connected to that area, posterior chain. And so if I feed my hamstrings, it's kind of like alleviating a little stress.
It does. It really does. Hey, Running Guru is in the house. Hello,
Running
gorgeous
Guru.
people.
What time
all the way from
where you
Isle
are?
of
If it's
Man.
your bedtime, you must be somewhere in Europe.
I love it. I love it. Jackie asks again, what is the longest you suggest running for a full marathon? I found that 18 miles worked perfect for me. Anything over caused some injuries. You know, Jackie, that is the perfect, you know, distance for you. Sometimes with the long runs, there's different ways to approach it, from going over distance really, really, really slow to doing something that might be in the 16 to 18 mile range. And if you're new, like maybe it's that, or if you're more experienced, you're doing a little bit higher quality stuff at the end. Sometimes you'll see plans that say 20 miles or 22. It's not arbitrary, but realize that like different, you know, recipes for beef stew, you can follow a few different things.
What would you think if she did 10 miles in the morning, 10 miles at night?
So the broken runs is an interesting strategy. I think that I don't have a lot of experience with that. You know, I'll say, have you ever done that?
Well, we did a lot of workouts like this just naturally because we had 2 days in college. And so it was a way of adding mileage. I've never broken up a long run so that I'm doing it in 2 different spots. You know, from a physiological perspective, like, you know, you're not going to recover. You know, one way that you have done this is in those Ragnar relays, and you realize very quickly your muscles do not recover that quickly from being off for 5 or 6 hours.
They really don't.
But if it helps you in terms of specifically what you're talking about, the run-walk thing, where you're you know,
I think that'd be an interesting thing to play with, especially if you're someone on the edge. And you have the time, of course, right? Because a lot of times you have families, like, to be able to get away for 2-hour-long sessions versus escaping for 1 2-hour thing is a little bit easier. But you know, the mental exposure of just trudging for 2 hours plus, I think is a valuable thing. Like to have some exposure. But then, as you said, to kind of offset that, you could do 2 1-hour runs, for example, 1 hour run in the morning and then in the evening. And that might be a different thing. You're still getting the same volume in there, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
So we got a couple more minutes left. We have talked a bit about, you know, the different training plans. We've talked about different philosophies and approaches. Are there certain coaches or methodologies that, you know, resonate with you? Do you have, you know, friends or training partners that have had success there? Listen to those things, but just because they have had success doesn't necessarily mean you will. Just getting back to the point that we do have different bodies, we're coming with different experience levels. So be open to different things, guys, and really think critically about the programs. Ask hard questions, why things are set up the way they are. Check out the program, be realistic with yourself. How many days a week not only can you run, do you want to run? You know, like, and be realistic from the sense of, if you're a brand new runner, running 6 days a week sounds really good. You might be better off following a program that has you run 4 and has you do some cross training on some other days to support things. And then a lot of programs will have a beginner to intermediate to advanced option. They'll give you some guidelines of, you know, where to go in there. We haven't talked too much about how fast to run all the runs in the program. That's always a big one.
Yeah, I mean, that is a whole topic of conversation. You know, I personally think this goes back to listening to your body. I mean, you cannot go hard every run because it actually does you a disservice. You don't get the kind of effect of the workout if you're going hard 2-3 days in a row. We often get these plans where it's like, oh, you know, if your pace is this during your long run, then this is what you're going to run. And the reason that's a really hard thing to find that correlation is that during a long run, you're usually like, you're not in race mode where this is like the edge of your ability. You're picking some, like, you're backing off, you know, how fast you can go by some amount. And so you're still going to be taxed. It's a long run. Whereas at the race, you're kind of going, hey, like, I expect to be fully empty. My tank is completely empty at the end of this race. And so there's a lot of variance. I think that, like, for people who are in the beginning, intermediate stages of their running career, you know, you don't have that much pace experience. If you can't, as an example, and I don't know this to be true for sure, but I would say that if you don't know what your pace is when you're running, meaning without checking your watch, like if you don't have that type of like knowledge of, hey, where you are in your pace knowledge, you know, so following things that are like very specific to pace and then correlating it to your racing is probably going to be a hard thing, because you know, once you get to the point where you know, like, hey, this is my, you know, 7 out of 10 pace, and I know that I'm always at 7:05s here for an 8-mile run. Like, that sort of knowledge comes over years of training and trying to like figure out your pace and your mileage and listening to your body. But when you're saying, hey, if you do an 8:08 pace during your long run, then you can run an 8-minute pace. It's a very hard thing to kind of correlate.
It is, and I think this is where just the more experience you have as a runner is helpful, and there's really no substitute, and that's part of the enjoyment and the journey of like getting to know your body better.
Totally.
There has to be some external feedback, right? Because like you got so dialed in running different paces because you ran circles around a track and you had splits and you were able to.
And also I ran in Houston, it was flat as hell, so I could tell within a second of
and you were able to like internalize those different things. But if you never got that external feedback of splits,
then you're never going to get that.
You're never going to get it. And the problem is when we get too focused on one thing or the other. So that balance back and forth is super helpful.
Where's my pod? I wanted to show that thing off.
And
to show your thing off. It's a new version of doing training. Here, I'll pick mine.
Oh, yeah. Here. So, guys, we just got this from Stride, which is really cool. Maybe some of you guys have used this. I know Edward Wickham has. He's in Yosemite right now.
This is a Stride pod.
It is a power-based training meter for running. Now, we've used a
magic trick. Watch this.
Whoa, look at that.
Anyhow, this pod is actually, it's basically taking the idea of power meters from cycling and turning it into running. So it kind of gives you your power output. We got this today, so like I haven't tried it out yet, but I'm excited to kind of use this throughout my half marathon training. It's kind of a good time for us to check this out.
It will be interesting to play with as we go.
You know
there,
what?
For sure.
This is what we can kind of check in with, because we're gonna have. Are you recording your runs on something?
Strava.
Yeah, I've got to get a watch.
I know.
I've never been a huge fan of GPS watches. If you guys have suggestions, we haven't really done any reviews.
I got the Polar.
Yeah.
I like it.
You like it?
Yeah. Do you want the Epson?
No.
I'll give you the Epson.
Oh wait, I thought you were talking about the Epson. You have a Polar. You have a good one.
I got a good one. It's real good.
Right.
Well, guys, we are coming
cool.
down to the end of the hour. It means we need to do our
Garmin
giveaway.
A watch. Oh, watch. Singular. Let's see how that goes.
Send it to San Rafael, you know. Anyway, guys, great conversation today. We're excited. Good.
We'll see you next week with
choosing the
updates
plan.
on Nate and my training. Hopefully, we stay healthy throughout this next 8 weeks. And,
Totally. And we are doing our giveaway for our TRE laces.
You know what I'm excited
and
about?
And a free month of the training club.
This is the first race that Nate and I have run together where I have at least some glimmer of hope of staying with him.
Dude, I am afraid.
The other races that we've done are these trail races where they're either very long or very hilly. It's not even a contest. Like, I can't. I see him at the beginning of the race, and then he doesn't wait for me, and it just keeps going.
The roads, though. The roads is your place.
The road is the only territory where I have.
I'm gonna struggle. I'm definitely gonna struggle. All right, our two winners from last week's initial giveaway of some TRE no tie shoelaces and a free month of the training club is Brent Ransom from Canton, Ohio. Congratulations, Brent, and Alexis Rivera, Philly, PA.
Philadelphia for you non-Phillyites. Is that a thing?
Guys, good job. Congratulations. We are excited to get you in training with us for that free month.
And
you could take advantage of that Happy Habits
Challenge.
Challenge.
Nate is back, and it's not just my mug that you're staring at for an hour. Pretty good, right? Well,
I know. I missed you guys too. It was really fun, but as they say, absence makes something grow fonder, I suppose. I don't know.
I'm glad he's back.
I'm glad he's back.
There's a lot of work that he needed to do.
Need to go race.
Guys, thank you so much. It is 1 o'clock, and we appreciate spending our lunch hour with you. We are going to be back next week, and keep us on point. I want you guys to ask us about how our training is. I don't want to forget that. I think this is a good thing. We got 8 weeks. We have another 7 shows, and then we will... And the reason that I'm excited about this is that it's a road race, and I'm not going to get my ass trampled, but I might.
Totally.
So I got to practice. I got to make sure my workouts are on point, and get this whole pod thing going on.
All right. So we're signing off.
All right. This is my turn. I got to sign off.
This is your turn to sign off.
Yeah. Alrighty.